What you're seeing here is a tortoise in pulmonary distress. She has an upper respiratory infection that doesn't seem to have developed into full-blown pneumonia just yet. As you can see, her balance is off. This could be from fluid in her lungs. It could even be her normal gait from weak bones as a result of metabolic bone disease. Only time will tell. Without intervention like you're about to see, she would surely die a slow, painful death as her lungs failed and bacteria spread to other organs, causing systemic failure throughout her entire body. I'm going to do my best to keep that from happening up here at the Arctic Reptile Ranch. Beyond just her inability to walk and her tendency to roll herself onto her back, other signs of her upper respiratory infection include a clear fluid discharge and bubbles from her nostrils, and she has a tendency to let her head droop and legs droop in an attempt to open up her lungs to give them as much surface area as possible inside of her shell. So there are several steps to medicating this cherryhead redfoot tortoise to get rid of her upper respiratory infection. Right here is bacterial, and because there's so little in it, sometimes it's hard to push out of the syringe. So what I do is, taking the water that I'll be using to mix later, I'll pull up a little bit of water with it so that it's slightly easier to inject. Mix it up real good, and this is ready for it. Next, I'm going to use this stuff, Critical Care. The ingredients are very similar to the Missouri tortoise diet. There's a little bit more vitamin and supplemental stuff within this than in the Missouri diet, but again, very similar. It has a different smell from some of the different plant-based items that are in it. But this is designed to give a high dosage of calories in a small amount back to the animal to help it recover. Because you can get rid of the infection with medicine, but if you don't give them other nutrients, their immune system isn't going to do what it needs to do. Mixing this is pretty simple. We take 1 teaspoon of it, and this has about 16 or 17 teaspoons worth in the container. Put it in there and take warm, hottish water. No hotter than your tap. You don't need boiling water for this. Just hot tap water. And it recommends mixing it in a 2-to-1 ratio, but I give it a little bit more water so that it will come out of the syringe a little bit better. If it's too thick, it just all backs up in there. I've also opened up the hole on the inside of the syringe here so that I can get a little bit more volume out at any given time. I was noticing some of the little pieces of plant were getting stuck in that nozzle, and you would push it and it would get stuck, and then it would make it push really hard, and it would go squirting all over the back of the tortoise, all over me. It was just an unpleasant experience, or more unpleasant than what we need to do here already is. This is a little bit thinner than the consistency of oatmeal the way I mix it. When you do mix it in the exact amount of 2-to-1, it's like a green, slightly soupy oatmeal. Whereas here I've got it almost the consistency of baby food. And this stuff isn't the most expensive stuff I've ever purchased for turtles as far as food goes, or something for nutrition, but it's not cheap and I don't want to waste it. So it takes a little time to get in here. It might be a little bit easier if I had a funnel, but this method works well enough because it's thick enough that I can just pour it in here and not waste a lot of it. And so now we have everything ready. We need to take the tortoise out, and that can sometimes be a struggle because she's getting a little bit healthier and she's getting stronger. So the first day and the second day it was kind of easy to grab her head and pull her out of her shell, and I could do it by myself, but now it takes most of my concentration to do that. So now I have my wife here helping. While I hold the tortoise, she's going to be administering the bacterial and slowly, pump by pump, putting a little bit more of the critical care into this cherryhead redfoot tortoise. So this is the new redfoot. She's a cherryhead. They come from Brazil, typically. She is full grown. She's, well, not full grown, but she is a fully adult female. She's about 22 centimeters. So she's at the adult size. She's putting on weight slowly as I give her daily soaks and administer all of her medications. So now we're going to go through the task of trying to get a hold of her head and keep her out, and open her mouth also, which can be a little bit harder. Her beak parts are kind of sharp, and I really gotta get my fingers in there, so I've been bitten about 10 times in the last couple of days. But it's only a little bit of pain, so it's worth her recovering. So the way to do this is you gotta trick them. You have to get them to bring their heads out like she's currently doing, and then get behind her head and hold her out, which sounds like an easy task, but it's really not. Then once you have a hold of her head, she's pulling back. There we go. Darn it. You can see why this can take a little time because she's slightly reluctant for this treatment. All right, I got her behind the head. So now I have to get her mouth part and open it and squirt that in. Cool. All right, hold on. I want to give her a chance to swallow that, and to show her that I'm not trying to choke her out, I'm just getting a hold of her head momentarily. So you're confident that all the bacterial has been administered, and that's a good sign. The bacterial, there are 10 doses, so she has to be given this over 10 days. The critical care is really there's no direction on how much to give her. It's whatever I think she needs to get calories and to get healthier. And I could give it to her throughout the entire 10 days. I have more than enough. But with any luck, by the 5th or 6th day of the bacterial, the infection, the bacteria that's within her lungs and in her entire ENT tract will be gone. She'll feel healthier and she'll want to eat on her own. If you have a tortoise that's sick and it's eating, there's no need to give it critical care because it's getting the calories that it needs, provided you're giving it the right types of foods. So since she's at a state where she's not eating yet, critical care is required. So now that she's a little bit calmed down from the first try, we're going to go ahead and give her some of the critical care. One trick, once you get her head out, is to stand her straight up and down. This just helps gravity, gives you a slight hand. All right. Oh, God, that one hurt. She got me that time, and it kind of hurt. I'll be fine. You can see she's starting to push back with her legs. So what we're doing is working. She's getting her strength back, but that makes it harder for us to do what we need to do. Okay. And I got it open. There we go. So we put a decent squirt down there. We're going to try to get this entire syringe full, one whole dose full, into her today. The best we've been able to do so far is about half of a syringe. This is also the first day that in the process of us medicating her, she's trying to walk away. So that tells me that what we're doing is working. She's not a fan of it. I don't think any normal person would be a fan of having their head held and having medication given to them. I know when I was a child, I definitely didn't like it, and that's kind of what my parents had to do to me to get me to take cough medicine because it tastes bad. So we'll give her a couple more shots of this stuff, and we'll be done with her, and later on today I'll soak her when all the other tortoises get soaked. That's good. All right. And again, you want to give them a second. This is way more than her head and neck could hold, so you want to give them a little time to swallow all their food. And when she gets up and starts walking away, that's a pretty good sign to me that she's probably swallowed it. What we were having a problem with before is not being able to get it all into her mouth, so we get all over her face, which makes it hard to pull her mouth pieces down because they get slippery. You'll notice that I keep using a paper towel to wipe her mouth off. The tortoise obviously doesn't care if she has food on her face, but what happens is this stuff is wet and slippery, so when it gets kicked up around her face, I can't get my fingers on there very good to pull down. And if you have a tortoise that's reluctant to take her head out, she lifts her head out because of her infection, so it just helps her breathe better. If you do, a lot of times just tickle them in the back, in the rear end, and they'll pull their back part of the body in, which kind of forces some of the front out. Luckily with her, it's not much of an issue. She just took a couple breaths. So. Cool. Oh. We'll see if she swallows that. So now that the medicating process is done, I'll put her back in her enclosure until a little bit later in this evening. Later this evening, I will give her a soak in water like all the rest of the tortoises, but unlike the rest of the tortoises, I'll mix in Pedialyte. Not straight Pedialyte, that might be a little bit too much for her, and she may be less likely to drink it. The Pedialyte gives her electrolytes. It really doesn't account for any calories. She's not getting supplemental food like the critical care does. But the Pedialyte is adding back electrolytes to her body, which just like an athlete who's expended a lot of energy, it's putting stuff back in. It's giving her calcium for muscle function. It's also giving her the sodium that her nervous system needs to transmit all the signals. Our guess is she's been pretty deprived throughout her life, or her more recent life, of proper nutrition. So we're trying to make up for about 3 or 4 years of malnourishment. It's not going to happen overnight, but whatever we can do to jumpstart that, it'll mean that over time she's more likely to get better and back up to a fully functioning tortoise. Thank you for tuning in to this medical emergency edition of the Arctic Reptile Ranch. I'll be sure to come back and give status updates on how her recovery is proceeding. You might see them here on YouTube, but if you don't see them here, go ahead and click on my blog. It's somewhere down there in the description. If you enjoyed this episode, go ahead and give it a like. If you really enjoy it, why don't you go ahead and subscribe to my channel and encourage your friends to have a look and subscribe also.